Hello, welcome to Breakfast Central this beautiful Thursday, reaching you live from Nigeria's commercial capital, Lagos. This is the show where we bring you everything you need to know, from insightful discussions to the latest news and trending topics. I am Gbenga Aboroa.
And I am Olive MOD. Good morning to the members of Nigeria's NYSC. The rest of you can collect your good morning from Gbenga. I'm just kidding. Of course, our NYSC members or our NYSC core members are the ones who are celebrating as they've started to receive 77,000 naira. But that's a conversation for much later. It's an exciting way to start the show, you would say. But let's start the show with something that has been one of the most annoying things that have happened in the past roughly 12 hours. We had on News Central the honor of interviewing Honorable Nwaebonyi, and
distinguished senator.
Distinguished senator.
His behavior
hasn't been very distinguished.
It's begging for a lot. You wonder if he deserves the address. There's a distinguished.
Now, it wasn't only just criticized the way and manner in which he spoke to Dr. Obi Ezekwesili. He came on our station, and he was speaking about Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan. We're not going to tell you what he said. Just take a listen.
Accused Reno Omokri of sexual harassment during the time of Goodluck Jonathan as president, when the young man was already in U.S. attending to national issue. But of unlucky to her, she didn't know that this young man was outside the country. Upon the slightest provocation, she will come up with allegation of sexual harassment. And I don't know what is wrong with this lady. Does she think that she's the most beautiful woman on earth? Or is it because she's had chocolate color? In my own assessment, she's not among the beautiful women in Nigeria. And it is high time we come hard on her. And why people like us are speaking on top of our voice is not just to protect and defend the Senate president, but to protect and defend her future victims. Even her present husband, she married her out of something like this. She threatened to sue the man and have a letter circulating over the world that the man should pay her 10 billion or marry her. The man had to marry her under duress. So the marriage was under duress, another product of blackmail. I was watching a video of how the father of the first wife of the husband narrated her ordeal when this lady came into their family, destabilized their family, and took over her husband.
All right.
And without going into her character, I asked Senator Natasha how many husbands has she had in her life.
I don't even know how, this whole rant he went on is related in any way, shape, or form to the conversation that's being had. Talking about her husband, this just sounds like personal vendetta. Sounds like he's all out for her, and it's not really about what is right and maintaining or upholding the rule of law, some would argue. And again, I think that I'm hoping that a number of these senators know that when they're speaking, they're not just speaking in their capacity as a regular, everyday Nigerian citizen. They are speaking in the capacity of the senator, a distinguished senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, not somebody having conversations in the beer parlor.
I mean, how are the issues on the table on ground related to her skin color, to her personal marriage, to her life, her children, her husband? This is just, it's disappointing to say the least. You don't expect this sort of conversations coming from someone in the capacity of a distinguished senator. These are sorts of things you hear in your local beer parlor. It's quite sad.
It's actually beer parlor conversation.
It's quite sad, and it's a concerted effort just to silence women and not let them speak. Because why are you not staying on the issues? Why are you bringing in personal family matters? This is very below and demeaning of a distinguished senator of the Federal Republic to speak in such a manner. If
we go back to the altercation he had with Dr. Obi Ezekwesili when he was spewing the words he was spewing against her, the one thing that there were a number of things that he said. One of the things he said to her is, "This is why you cannot submit to any man," and that is again reeking of some
very misogynistic statement.
Right. So I think the question I want to ask is, do you really have a problem with women? Senator Nwaebonyi, do you have a problem with women? The way he went at Dr. Obi Ezekwesili, the way he's now going against Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan,
in less than 24 hours. And it's almost very personal. You're not even the one that the accusations are directed at. You're not the Senate president.
No, he has a right. I can't take it,
I
you know,
understand,
he has the right to defend whoever he chooses to defend.
The way he's taking it so personal and resulting to personal insults and vituperations is very unnecessary.
And again, it goes back to what we said yesterday on the show. If you, as a senator or as a human, a Nigerian citizen, know that you are being filmed, you say a number of these things on camera, one wonders what is being said off camera, what is being done off camera. But that is for Honorable Nwaebonyi and the number of Nigerians who have decried, rejected a number of the statements that he's made and condemned in strong terms. You know, the statements he's made against Dr. Obi Ezekwesili and against Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan. We'll come back to talk about that much later. But then let's talk to you about Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan. It would seem that the recall process is now in order. INEC has made a U-turn after telling us that the voters did not, the constituents, I beg your pardon, did not have their data, that their email addresses, their phone numbers were not there, and in 24 hours, 250,000 email addresses and phone numbers have been found. Isn't that a miracle? Where are the guys from
Guinness Book of Records when you need them? Because this is miracle level stuff, record breaking. In 24 hours, you get signatures and email addresses of, I think what we'll just say is pretty damsel 1, pretty damsel 2 at yahoo.com, pretty damsel
Slim Shady to die for.
Yes, Kogi Princess 1, 2, 3.
You know, the same miracle with the entire INEC. This would have been an opportunity, should be an opportunity for INEC to be able to show that it is clear, it is void of, it is transparent, and it is fair. But again, many Nigerians have started to think that, and we're going to touch on this much later when we look at what Nigerians are saying, that INEC probably did that initial stunt to make it seem like they're being fair.
In less than 24 hours.
The closest, Nigeria hasn't had a successful recall of a senator because of how tedious the process is based on the provisions of the Constitution. But the closest we've come to having recalled a senator was in 2017 with Senator Dino Melaye. We saw what happened when the Kogi West senator we had the constituents also come out en masse. Hundreds of them came out, signed. I think they had about 188,000, slightly a little over 188,000. Yes, they came out, they all signed the same thing. Everything failed at the point of INEC's verification. I think it was also because Senator Dino Melaye was able to fight tooth and nail, going to court. So the legal battles, INEC was fighting legal battles whilst also trying to do this. So it took a while. It would seem that the steam from those who were trying to push for the recall did calm down by the time it was time to do the verification.
This current guy seems to be very determined.
And everything is happening pretty quickly. And it's interesting to see that accusations of Yahaya Bello have come up more than once in both scenarios. But I mean, if I say Baba, you say Gida, now you sabi. We'll take what Nigerians are saying much later about the story regarding the U-turn that INEC has made about this, and you should let us know what your thoughts are. Do you think that we're going to be breaking records again and having the first successful recall of a senator, a Nigerian senator? And if this happens, do you think that this will now set the ground for Nigerians to unite and start to kick out all the senators that they think are not performing, the underperforming senators, like some of the people you're probably thinking about? Well, let us know your thoughts at News Central TV, or you can tweet at us individually. For now, let's share with you what our top stories are this morning on Breakfast Central. Is Nigeria becoming a one-party system under APC? A valid question, and we'll be joined by the table shaker himself to look at this. We'll be looking at rebuilding trust in Nigeria's judicial system, joined by the NBA President Afam Osigwe. Lawmakers clash over June 12th. Of course, the debate high data costs, and the conversation about immortalizing Humphrey Nwosu was a key conversation, and there have been 42 more bills that have advanced in the House of Representatives. We'd review the newspaper front pages, opening the phone lines and having our analysts join us, and we ask you to join us for all these and more.
Hello and welcome to Breakfast Headlines. I am Gbenga and Olive. We begin the news in the National Assembly where 42 additional constitutional amendment bills have advanced in the House of Representatives, addressing key issues such as the removal of constitutional immunity for the Vice President, governors and their deputies, as well as the separation of the roles of the Attorney General of the Federation and states and those of the Minister and Commissioners for Justice. This development brings the total number of amended bills that have passed the second reading to 81. Among the proposed amendments is a bill seeking to grant citizenship rights to foreign spouses of Nigerian women, aimed at ensuring greater representation of women and youth in government appointments. Still in Abuja, 39 constitutional amendment bills addressing key areas such as the judiciary, legislature, security and electoral reforms have passed their second reading in the House of Representatives. The leader of the House, Julius Ihonbere, led the motion for their consideration, highlighting key proposals, including an amendment that would make the recommendation of the National Judicial Council mandatory for the removal of heads of Nigerian courts. Another key proposal seeks to empower the Chief Justice of Nigeria to issue a proclamation for the inauguration of the new National Assembly. Also in focus is a bill advocating for the establishment of state and local government police forces, as well as a proposal to create a political parties registration and regulatory commission to strengthen the oversight of political parties in the country. Let's also tell you that the bill seeking to empower the Nigerian Bar Association to remove corrupt judges through a no-confidence vote skilled second reading in the House of Representatives, sponsored by Afam Osigwe, a member of the Labour Party representing Ogbaru Federal Constituency of Anambra. The bill aims to alter sections 231, 238, 250, 256 and 271 of the 1999 Constitution, which deals with the procedure for the removal of judges. The bill seeks to confer powers on the NBA to receive petitions against any erring judicial officer, considering the defense of the petitioned officer, and if not satisfied, conduct a confidence vote. Now let's go to Rivers State now, where the state government has suspended all political office holders and appointees across the state with immediate effect. This decision was made in pursuant of the powers conferred on the state's administrator, retired Vice Admiral Ibok Etta Ibas, by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who suspended from the governor Siminalayi Fubara, according to the statement issued by the Chief of Staff to the sole administrator. The suspended officials are directed to hand over to permanent secretaries in their respective ministries, departments and agencies. In cases where no permanent secretaries are in place, the most senior director or head of administration is to take over. And that's all on Breakfast Headlines. I'm Gbenga and Olive. Breakfast Central continues shortly.
Welcome back. The judiciary, often regarded as the heart of democracy, must admit that public trust remains its lifeblood. However, Nigeria's judicial system has faced persistent challenges over the years, leading to a steady erosion of confidence. In the past year, this distrust has reached unprecedented levels. Following recent events, many Nigerians now perceive the judiciary as a tool for political maneuvering rather than a mechanism for justice. With the growing trend of political figures obtaining court rulings as it favors them, leaving lawyers and Nigerians struggling to interpret numerous ambiguous judgments, and the persistent debate over jurisdiction, the legal landscape in Nigeria has experienced a lot of complications and has rarely faced a severe crisis of confidence like this.
As public confidence declines, Nigerians are increasingly seeking alternative avenues for redress. Social media outrages and street protests have become more common, with 2024 witnessing a significant rise in demonstrations as opposed to the long wait for verdicts in courtrooms. To discuss these pressing issues, we're joined this morning on Breakfast Central by the President of the Nigerian Bar Association, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Afam Osigwe. One welcome to you and thanks for joining us on Breakfast Central.
Thank you so very much for having me.
Now, Mr. Osigwe, the judiciary is commonly referred to as the last hope of the common man, but the Nigerian judiciary, as we speak, is often perceived as slow, inefficient, and sometimes compromised. Do you agree with this description? And do you think the Nigerian judiciary today is in need of reforms?
Well, to the first leg of your question, I will unhappily acknowledge that the perception of the judiciary is low, is negative. around 2011 or 2012, when he was appointed the acting Chief Justice of Nigeria, the late Honorable Justice Dahiru Mustafa, in an address delivered at the Supreme Court, acknowledged, and in his words, as it stands today, it appears the society that we serve is no longer satisfied with the work we do. Now, and he went on to make the point that it's not about the reality, it's not about the truth of the statement, but about the fact that they feel that way. So that makes the saying opposite in this circumstance, that perception is greater than reality. And if the people you serve do not think you're serving them well, that would appear to be the publicly acceptable verdict about the work you do. It may not really matter that most of the time you do a great job, that you do a job that meets every acceptable international standard and best practices. But if the thinking, if the perception of the actual work you do is not good, then you have to deal with that and go to the root causes of why do people think that judiciary is not working well. If we continue to make the argument and try to bring statistics to show how the judiciary has done excellently well, they will miss the point. Like some unknown author said, he said that with reality, they have nothing to do, but with perception, you can maneuver it and switch it and change it as you like. So with perception, the public will continually, based on the understanding of the work of the judiciary, based on how they think judicial decisions affect them, based on the understanding of how these judgments were arrived at or the reasoning behind them, continually believe that the judiciary is not doing a good work. And it worries all of us because we want to, for those of us in the legal profession, we want the society to have confidence in the work we do. We want the society to believe that indeed the judiciary is the last hope of the common man. And like I said, we don't have to argue with them that we're doing an excellent job. We must let them see that we're doing an excellent job because it is how they see and feel about the work we do that counts at the end of it all. Now to the second leg of your question, do I think that there is need for judicial reform? I will not hesitate in saying a resounding yes. We need to look at our court system. We need to have our court system and the judicial system embrace technology. We need to be a bit more transparent about how decisions are arrived at. I make the point that in this age and time, it is preposterous that very minute percentage of our courts have electronic or e-filing system or document retrieval system. The ways we file processes and spell processes is still, to say it bluntly, a cake. You would think that the court system would have embraced technology in the filing of processes, in the hearing of cases, and also in the assignment of cases. You would expect that when people file cases in court, the court system would have been so integrated into some kind of technology that allows the cases to be assigned by a system that will not accuse it of bias or favoring one judge against the other. You would expect that technology would drive the way we do things. You would expect that immediately a court delivers a judgment, that judgment will be publicly available, not having to wait for days and days and sometimes weeks before that copy of that judgment is made available, and sometimes leading to allegation by some person that what was read was certified and given out. The court system was so transparent, the way they do it in the Western world, that a judgment rendered in the UK, for example, you can access it and read it in Nigeria the very next minute after it's been delivered. We should also look at the court system, the appointment process, the judging process, the disciplinary process. Look at the NJC and its current composition, and the disciplinary process, the composition of disciplinary architecture of the NJC, and have a look at it and make it such that it is independent and the people are able to trust the outcome of such process, so that the appointment process is driven by merit and not some other consideration. And also to ensure that access to justice is easy and that cases don't spend intolerable length of time in court. I can go on and on and on, but these are some of the key things I want to point out, which I regard as low-hanging fruits that we can achieve, some that require constitutional amendments that can be achieved at this time that the National Assembly is looking at as you're going through a constitutional review amendment process.
Exactly.
And also the court.
I'm glad that you brought that in, because that's another angle I wanted us to look at. On Tuesday, the House of Representatives had a bill that passed a second reading to amend sections of the Constitution to allow for the NBA to receive petitions against corrupt judges. I want to get your thoughts on this bill and the role that you think the NBA has to play in ensuring that the judiciary, the sanctity of the judiciary is upheld.
Let me start by noting that aside from what I have read in social media and electronic media, I have not seen a copy of this bill. But I would, if I'm to judge or comment based on that, I would view it with some degree of circumspection, because that view seems to suggest that when we attend the annual general meeting, lawyers will now decide the fate of a judge, maybe a judge in Sokoto or Zamfara, Anambra or Edo or Delta. And I worry that such a process may become politicized or may be polarizing. I would want a process of discipline of judges that is made up of lawyers, laymen, and maybe some retired judicial officers, not ones that will go to an NBA general conference and maybe to be sent into maybe lobbying or campaigning for a judge to be removed or not to be removed. I've not read the bill, and I would like to, at the bar, we're trying to lay our hands on a copy of the bill so that our relevant committee will review it and present the views of the association. But speaking personally, I'll view that suggestion with some degree of circumspection.
Okay, so maybe we'll wait until we get a physical copy of the bill. But I also want to go back to one of the flaws that you've mentioned, the delay in transmitting certified true copies of judgment. We saw that play out, for example, in Rivers State when Governor Siminalayi Fubara said that he was going to obey the court, but he needed to lay his hand on the copy, which took, I think, about a week for him to get that. Now, speaking of Rivers State, the declaration of state of emergency, the invocation of Section 305 of the Constitution, the NBA has spoken about it. You have criticized it, and this has been made public on I think on the 18th of March. There was a Facebook post to that effect on the NBA page. Let's talk about your thoughts. I mean, I know you've shared them online, but share them with us again. Your thoughts about the implications of what has happened in Rivers State with the sole administrator that, of course, is now in charge of Rivers State, and what this might mean for the future of democracy in Nigeria.
Now, why we had to make that statement was we believe that our motto is promoting the rule of law, and Nigeria should be a country ruled by law and not by men. And our actions should be governed by the dictates of the Constitution, both the spirit and the letters of the same. And that whenever any government functionary takes a decision or makes a pronouncement, such pronouncement or decision must be justified in the context of the Constitution, which is 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And looking at the content of the address by the President, we were of the view that the reason stated for the declaration of state of emergency did not meet the requirement of Section 305, I think subsection 2. And also the declaration by the President suspending the governor, his deputy, and the sitting of the House of Assembly, in our view, was also unconstitutional, in that the Constitution does not empower a president or any person, for that matter, except the House of Assembly, to remove or suspend a governor. In this section 11.4 of the Constitution, which has to be read together with Section 305, makes it clear that in an emergency, that the National Assembly does not have power to remove a governor. And I don't want to waste my time on the argument whether suspension is removal, because when I suspend you, I remove you, I'll be temporarily from acting in your office. And we should take that argument as being of no moment. So the point is, the President does not have the power. And some people may argue, but say it's National Assembly and not the President. For the President to have express power to remove a governor, such powers must be donated by the Constitution. And if you look at Section 188, I think, which stipulated circumstances or reasons for removal of a governor, of a person to cease to act in the office of a governor, declaration of state of emergency is not one of the grounds. And if we are led by the Constitution, it must be such that no such power is exercised by a person that cannot be justified in reference to the Constitution. And it has great implications for the society, because if we allow such things to keep happening, a president who is desperate for power, who wants to become a dictator, can wake up one morning and give a reason and suspend most governors, or any governor at will, without any justification, and give any reason and justify by that intelligence available to him shows that A, B, and C are about to happen or had happened, and this person was responsible, and then the person proceeds to act. That is the reason why we had to make that, because we are a nation ruled by law, and our law does not justify the actions that have taken place. Likewise, the ratification by the National Assembly.
Now, Mr. Osigwe, there was a prison break in Cotton Cafe Correctional Center in Kogi State just this Monday, a few days ago. Almost 70% of Nigeria's prison population consists of pre-trial detainees. Some have been awaiting trial for years. What policy are you and the NBA pursuing, and legislative reforms do you recommend to tackle this issue and ensure speedy dispensation of justice?
Well, I would like to note that there are already provisions in our law regulating what to be done to avoid having a prison population dominated by pre-trial inmates, or what we call awaiting trial inmates. Now, there are provisions in the ACJA on how remand orders are to be made. And most of the persons in these facilities were sent there by magistrates or courts on remand order, even in the absence of any pending charge against them. And the ACJ has stipulated that when a magistrate makes such an order, that the person should be brought back to court within 14 days, and a certain maximum number of, I think, 59 days. If the police cannot justify the keeping of that person, then the person should be released. It also extends to persons who are being detained in police facilities, EFCC, and then a BSSS facility. The law is that such persons, the magistrates are to visit those facilities, detention facilities, once every month. And this is not being done. So at the bar, we're embarking on an advocacy that these provisions of the law be activated. I always make the point that sometimes some of the provisions of the law needed to obviate these harsh situations, unfair situations we have in our detention facilities are there in the law. It is our inability, our unwillingness or refusal to implement the provisions of this law.
Shouldn't there be punitive measures for not following the law to the letter, for not implementing these provisions of the law? There should be consequences.
Well, unfortunately, most times in the public sphere, there are no consequences for bad behavior. In fact, sometimes there's also some kind of resistance to the exercise of these judicial powers by magistrates. There was then a case, I think from Lagos or somewhere, where a magistrate went to visit a police facility to carry out this statutory function, and the DPO threatened to arrest the magistrate for insisting on doing that. And I can't remember the outcome of that matter. So we have problems. The people who are in charge of these facilities are very opaque. They sometimes will not release data to even let you know what is the number of those who are in detention, what is the number of those who are there without order. The police stations are supposed to have a board where they write the names of those who are being detained, how long they have been detained, also, and then their reason for detention. Most times when you go there, you see just 2 names, while in the facility, there are much more than 2 persons in detention. And some also cleverly, when they get wind that the magistrate is coming to carry out this function, that is where it is even exercised. We clear the detention facilities and exhibit and show you a near empty cell. So we have a problem. So we have problems of some magistrates signing blank remand orders that the police quickly, that the law enforcement agents gladly fill in without providing details, without there being a hearing or without a date being given for return for a review of the detention. And some people are so therefore detained indefinitely, therefore overpopulating our prisons. And that is why you see the unfortunate incidents of continued jailbreak. And Cotton Calfee has suffered more than one jailbreak. Mm-hmm. So we should worry about sending persons to detention who may oftentimes spend more time than they would ordinarily spend in detention if they were convicted. And we present a society that appears not to care about the damage to do to persons. Some come out broken, some lose their lives while in detention. And so we should activate our laws. I'm using this opportunity to call on the Chief Justice of State to insist that the right thing be done, to give marching orders to magistrates not to make indefinite remand orders of persons, to order the release of persons if no charge is filed against them, if they are not being given an opportunity to defend themselves in court. And then the prison population should also be, I'm calling on the Minister of Interior also to insist and direct all prisons not to accept any person who is sent there on remand if there is no evidence given that there's a pending charge or that there's a date for review of such cases. We must make our correctional system work. We change the name from Nigerian Prison Service to Nigerian Correctional Service. We must indeed show that we are sending people to these places for correction and not for punishment and not for persecution or for abuse of power. They must be shown that they are being sent there on account of what they have done or what is believed that they have done, or because they cannot be trusted to be safe while they are they are not trusted not to commit an offense or not be a threat to society where their trials are pending, but not being sent there just as a show of power or as an abuse of the judicial process, and just send him there, leave him there, let us rest. We shouldn't have such kind of a system.
All right. Speaking about the abuse of power, what would you say is your perception or your analysis of the Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration and the ability of this administration to be able to subject itself to the rule of law and, to not abuse power? So what are your thoughts on the current administration, and do you think that they've been fair and they haven't abused power like a number of them will claim?
Well, I will not say that the administration has abused power. Yes, the Rivers State incident stands out. We have not had a case of abuse of the judicial process or refusal to obey court judgment, except for the institutional refusal to obey court judgment, which percolates all tiers of government in Nigeria, where judgments against state, local government, and federal government and their agencies are almost impossible to enforce. So I wouldn't want to say that there has been a case of people's rights to freedom of expression has largely been respected. There are many incidents of big men, not necessarily the government, individuals abusing the law just to get persons detained or remanded in prison simply because they express views critical of them.
All right. I mean, there have been a number of people beyond the government, also private individuals.
That's the point I'm making. Most of these abuses are by private persons, so-called big men, rich men, who were able to put the judicial process to the wrong use, but not more of a governmental thing.
Why does it seem that the courts? Why does it seem that the courts seem to be biased in favor of wealthy and well-connected individuals? Is justice not meant to be blind? Or why are there different sets of laws with regards to your social status in society?
Well, if that appears to be the case, it may be because of the ability of big men to use wealth and influence opposition to get the judicial process or the law enforcement agencies to do their bidding, and which shouldn't be.
Okay. Now, Mr. Osigwe, financial autonomy of the judiciary has been a long-standing demand. How does this lack of financial autonomy or independence impact the efficiency of our courts? And what's the NBA strategy to push for its implementation? What's the global best practice on financial autonomy in the judiciary?
Let us make the point that NBA is not a cure-all association. We are part of the society. All of us, me and you, and every member of the society have a role to play in ensuring judicial autonomy. And even the judiciary itself, because sometimes some heads of court surrender their independence to their chief executive or the governor or the president, especially at the states. They go cap in hand. They refuse to do that which is right in order to assert the independence of the judiciary. They feel the compelling need to do the bidding of the governor so as to satisfy him for monuments for the judiciary to be released. But besides talking about financial autonomy of the judiciary, we must also talk about transparency and accountability on the part of judiciary and effective and the judicious use of resources made available to them. If the new judiciary is not independent, it lends them to manipulation by the executive or whoever holds purse string, and that should not be so. Money meant for the judiciary should be released direct to the judiciary so that judiciary will utilize it for the good of the judiciary. If judiciary needs to build courthouses, it should have the capacity to do this, execute this project without the executive doing them for them, without another person pretending them. If they abuse, as some people are laid that sometimes the judiciary abuses it, they do not build or do what they are proposed to do with the money, then let this be investigated and persons who are found wanting in this regard be called to the question. NBA will continue the advocacy for judicial financial autonomy, for respect for the rule of law, for judiciary not to be treated like a poor relative who has to be exhibited before the media and the public to show how good the executive is to them. Oh, I built courthouses for my courts. I bought cars for my judges. And then the governor will take pictures with the judges. No self-respecting judiciary should be subjected to such humiliation. And no self-respecting judge should allow himself or herself to be so exhibited, collecting a car as a show of benevolence from the government.
What about
and we are willing to also tackle the government.
What about the instances, I mean, I'm glad that you mentioned that, but instances of the Minister of the FCT, for example, and the work
building judges' quarters, yes.
The judges' quarters, that he's built, does that count for something?
The point we are making is that if any court has made for any infrastructure, the money should be released to them. It should not be released to any minister or any governor to do that for them.
So they're not really doing them a favor.
That's the principle. Wherever it happens, whether it's at the FCT or at the states, it is an action that should not be encouraged. The judiciary should be allowed to take care of your needs. That is in the spirit of financial autonomy for the judiciary. They should not be exhibited and made for the public as a public show for the public to see how well the executive is taking care of them. I don't see that being done for the legislature, and it shouldn't be done for judiciary, especially judiciary, so that it will be able to independently carry out its functions as enshrined in the Section 6 of the Constitution.
All right, let's now come to the most recent case. Some would call it sexual allegations, some would call it abuse of power, in light of the recent situation surrounding Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan and the Senate President, Senator Godswill Akpabio. I'd like you to speak to some of the legal angles that the NBA or that you may have considered and what's the way forward. I'm
sorry, I will be unable to speak about any aspect of the cases. These matters are in court, and it is prejudicial and irresponsible for me to comment on matters that are pending before the courts. Under the sub-judice, I can't talk about them.
Yes.
And whether we talk about something else rather than about something.
We respect your position, sir. Now let's talk about the stifling of freedom of speech in our democracy. We've seen quite a number of activists that have been stifled. They've been used, the government seems to use the cyber stalking law as a means to shut down dissent. What's the NBA doing about protecting freedom of speech in our democracy?
Now, apparently you have missed our statements on this, where we have said that we believe that use of the cyber stalking law is unconstitutional, is being used to muzzle free speech, and is being abused by big men and politicians to avoid accountability and people opposing, criticizing them. And we also made the point that people who hold positions of authority should not be touchy. They should accept that they may be criticized, and what they do not like, sometimes they used to refer to them to describe their actions. And it would be unfair for us to continue to use that law. And that law has also been struck down by, I'm told, the Federal High Court in Lagos. And there is a bit of confusion as to whether that law has also not been amended such as to remove all that. Our position is that if any person feels offended by a statement made by any person, you have recourse. You have some remedy in civil law to remedy that. The remedy should not be in quickly getting that person, take that person to court, and then remand the person. And sometimes, even when the offense is bailable, refuse them bail or take bail application and then refuse to rule on it and adjourn for weeks so as to detain the person for some length of time, or even courts refusing them bail, even when such statements are not in any way inciting or have not led to any breakdown of law and order. You just use it as a show of force to shut people up, to stop people from criticizing you. That's an unfair use of power, and to that extent, we believe that law is unconstitutional, is oppressive, and should not have any place in our statute books, and should not be used by the law enforcement agencies or any big man or government official to stop people from expressing their views, as unpleasant as they may sometimes be, as uncouth and as annoying as the language may sometimes be.
All right, just to also speak to a statement by the Chief Justice of the country, Justice Kudirat yesterday, I believe. She was speaking at the Body of Bench's inaugural annual lecture, and she talked about the concern about the eroding of ethical principles by legal practitioners, and stating that the Body of Benches have a role to lead the charge. Would you maybe be able to speak to some of the areas, the challenges that you've seen in that regard, or what she might have been speaking about?
Well, the statement by the Chief Justice of Nigeria was apt. There is many of us legal practitioners are forgetting the rules of professional conduct. We are doing things that we should not do. We conduct media trials, we make comments on cases that are pending in courts, even lawyers that are involved in such cases where they are weak down. Many lawyers go on air to discuss cases or judgments that they have not read. They go to discuss ongoing cases. These are unethical. Many lawyers bring cases that are frivolous, that have no place in our courts. We do so many things that do not portray the legal profession in a good light. And of course, the Body of Benchers has a great role to play, because the committee that is in charge of the discipline of lawyers, the Legal Practitioner Disciplinary Committee, is a committee of the Body of Benchers. And it is that body that must ensure that discipline is instilled in legal practitioners by trying cases for petitions or complaints brought against legal practitioners, and in appropriate cases, sanction them by either disbarring them, suspending them, censuring them, or ordering them to do or refrain from doing some things. We cannot also talk about negative perception of the judiciary and not talk about that of lawyers, because it takes two to tango. A number of the problems we have before our courts are also caused by lawyers and some judicial officers. And all of us must do a self-assessment and tell ourselves the bitter truth that we need to do better and that we need to sit up and at every point be guided by the ethics of our profession and know that any errant lawyer will be disciplined and may be shown the way out of the profession. So that statement was apt considering the times we're in and some of the things legal practitioners are being accused of doing or actually doing.
Now, Mr. Osigwe, just before we wrap things up, as current NBA president, what legacy would you like to leave behind in terms of strengthening Nigeria's judiciary?
Well, I would like to be part of an NBA that is part of the innovation of introducing technology in our courts, making access to justice very easy, bringing technology to the filing and hearing of cases, and also ensuring that there's a lot of reform in the correctional system and in the judicial system to ensure that persons who have no business being in detention are detained, and that the judges, the magistrates, and all court heads perform their statutory functions of visiting facilities, and also for an NBA that stands on the side of rule of law, that ensures that our laws are not abused, that people who are in positions of authority or influence do not abuse the law for their own good. An NBA that society looks up to in times of moral or constitutional crisis.
All right, and my final question would be about conflicting court judgments, which seem to have been a challenge. We've seen that with the Kano Emirate tussle, we've seen that Yahaya Bello and EFCC and several other instances. What measures can be taken to ensure that we don't continue to find ourselves at this crossroads that taints the judiciary in negative light?
Well, the judiciary itself is aware of people's views about conflicting court decisions. And we have also at the set up an appellate adjudicative committee that reviews some of these judgments, shows the conflicts in them, and is also supposed to provide a guide as to what should be the proper position of the law. It worries everybody. It worries lawyers that sometimes on an issue you're not able to advise your client as to what is the exact position of the law. Because most times, especially in electoral and political cases, for every case you refer to, somebody has another case that also says the opposite, and that doesn't look good. So we should also continually engage with the judiciary to ensure that this is reduced to the barest minimum, and that such conflicts are resolved in appropriate cases so that the law is restated and everybody is guided as to what is the correct position of the law. Because if we do not do that, there won't be certainty as to what our law says. And also people may not be able to approach our courts or enter into a contractual relationship with a good knowledge of what the position of the law is. All
right. NBA President Afam Osigwe, SAN, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
We look forward to speaking with you again.
Thank you very much. And do have a day.
All right. Now moving on, tensions flared at the Nigerian Senate on Wednesday as lawmakers disagreed over a motion to immortalize the late Humphrey Nwosu, the former National Electoral Commission chairman who oversaw the widely celebrated June 12, 1993 elections, adjudged to be Nigeria's freest and most credible conducted to date. Also on the floor, lawmakers raised concerns over the rising cost of internet data in Nigeria and its implication on the youth and small businesses, and even we here are feeling the impact. News Central's National Assembly correspondent, Sagir Ibrahim, brings details of these and more.
As the day's proceedings kicked off, a motion of urgent national importance was raised by lawmaker Naya Baribe, calling for the Senate to immortalize late Humphrey Nwosu for his role in conducting what is still regarded as Nigeria's freest and fairest election. Abaribe stressed the historical importance of June 12 election, urging the Senate to honor the legacy of the man who led the National Electoral Commission at the time. His motion was, however, interrupted by the Senate leader Okpeyemi Bamidele, who pointed out that many senators had not yet received copies of the motion.
Professor Humphrey Nwosu supervised the 1993 presidential elections, aware that the courageous defense of democratic electoral process during the 1993 presidential election led to the famous June 12 slogan, which ultimately confirmed Alhaji MKO Abiola as the winner.
A senator moving a motion under combined orders 41 and 51 shall ensure that copies of the motion are available for all senators when approval to move the motion is granted. This.
Mr. President, they are all available. We are all there with them. We brought it. We don't have a motion.
Well,
the presiding officer of the Senate then advised that the motion be stepped down until all lawmakers have access to the document.
Since the copies are not available, let's step it down until everybody gets it. We'll come back to it.
However, after confirmation that the motion had been circulated, Abaribe sought to continue. When the motion was put to a voice vote, the nays had it, effectively shutting it down. Abaribe, visibly displeased, again raised a point of order under Order 1B, but was again blocked by the Senate leader, who stated that the chamber had moved past the point in the day's order paper.
We are not under a dictatorship, Mr. President. That is why I'm using 1B to come.
Meanwhile, in another motion of urgent national importance, Asu Kwaipeyong of Cross River South decried the increase in data cost by communication providers. He says that some providers had increased data prices by as much as 200%.
The Senate notes that telecommunication providers in Nigeria have recently increased the cost of data services by as much as 200%, a move that has placed significant financial strain on millions of Nigerians, especially young people who rely on the internet for their livelihood. Urgent government intervention is required to ensure that affordable internet access remains available to all Nigerians, particularly the young Nigerians who are the backbone of Nigeria's digital economy.
The motion received broad support, with lawmakers backing the call for investigations and urgent reforms to address rising internet costs. In Abuja for News Central, I'm Saki O'Brien.
42 additional constitutional amendment bills have been advanced in the House of Representatives, addressing key issues such as the removal of constitutional immunity for the Vice President, governors and their deputies, as well as the separation of roles of the Attorney General of the Federation and State from those of the Minister and Commissioners for Justice. This development brings the total number of amended bills that have passed the second reading to 81. Among the proposed amendments is a bill seeking to grant citizenship rights to foreign spouse of Nigerian women, aimed at ensuring greater representation of women and youths in government appointments. The House, after deliberating on the bill, advocated for the creation of new states alongside other issues of national importance.
A bill for an act to alter the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 as amended to provide for the public disclosure of reports of the Auditor General of the Federation and for Auditor General of a state and for related matters. Second reading. A bill for an act to alter the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 to qualify immunity conferred on the President, remove the immunity conferred on the Vice President, the governors, and their deputies in order to curb corruption, eradicate impunity, and enhance accountability in public office and for related matters. Second reading. A bill for an act to alter the provisions of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 to grant citizenship rights to spouses of women from Nigeria, specify the minimum number of youths and women that may be appointed into specific offices and for related matters. Second reading. A bill for an act to alter the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 as amended to guarantee indigent status to persons by reason of birth or continued residence for a period not less than 10 years or by reason of marriage and for related matters.
Yeah, there you have it. Quite a lot of bills here.
I mean, it's great, kudos to them, but it's really embarrassing and it's a shame that it took us to get to 2025 for us to be having conversations about a woman being able to confer citizenship rights to her husband.
My sister is in that situation.
It's ridiculous. You marry a Westerner. I mean, if I if you as a man,
it makes you a lesser Nigerian.
Exactly.
If as a man I can confer citizenship rights on my wife, why shouldn't a woman?
be
Are we
able
not
to do
all
the same?
Nigerians?
Exactly. Am I less Nigerian than you?
I'm happy
so
you picked on that one.
It's a shame that we had to get to 2025 to be having this conversation. But
like they say, it's better late than
the same
never.
time you wake up is your morning.
Exactly.
Also, back to the Humphrey
Good morning,
Nwosu thank you, my brother. Back to the Humphrey Nwosu conversation. It really caused a lot of uproar in the House yesterday, and it's an important conversation to have, especially because if you look at the role he played in ensuring the freeness and the fairness of June 12 elections, being able to stand against a military government, you know, and
Senator Baribe's papers were there for circulation.
They are saying they didn't get the papers, and
by the time they got it, they said things have moved on.
And also, it was also interesting to hear the perspective that they were sharing as to, oh, you know, he's a highly controversial figure. What is controversial
How is it
about
controversial?
What the
He
one thing that
supervised
everybody
Nigeria's
can
freest
agree with
election.
is that that was the freest election, and we haven't had an election close to that election since then. So I do think that it's important to give honor when honor is due, and what they're asking for, things like renaming INEC to be Humphrey Nwosu, to
the headquarters. Yes.
Exactly, renaming the headquarters after him. Well, the question is whether the headquarters can live up to the reputation that
of Humphrey Nwosu. And let's hope that Senator Baribe represents.
Well, I think he'll be represented today, if I'm correct. Yeah, I think it will be. But these are the conversations on the House. More bills. There's a lot of work, a lot of progress has been made. Let's share with you, if you're just joining us, the conversations we've had this morning, and let you know what's coming up next. This morning on Breakfast Central, is Nigeria becoming a one-party system under APC? It's a conversation that we had, and we'll still have much later with Reno Omokri. We talked about rebuilding the trust in Nigeria's judicial system, and we're joined by the NBA President Afam Osigwe, SAN. Lawmakers clash over June 12 and the debate high data costs. We here are feeling the pinch as well of the high data costs. Now let's share what's coming up next.
Coming up next in Breakfast Central, 42 more bills advanced in House of Representatives. We'll bring you the newspaper front pages. Remember, you could call in and share your thoughts with us. And Olive will be telling us what Nigerians are saying. You stay with us. Breakfast Central continues shortly.
If you're just tuning in, welcome to Breakfast Central. A number of conversations have been had this morning, but we'll bring you up to speed. Remember that our conversations are also posted on our YouTube channel, as well as all social media platforms at News Central TV. It's time for us to review the newspapers, and you can share your thoughts on any of the stories by calling the numbers on your TV screen. Let's look at our first paper this morning, and on the front page of the first paper, we have the Daily Independent. The big story there: reps consider bill to strip vice presidents, governors, deputies of immunity.
No.
I don't know.
I mean, we're already dealing with the courts seem to be inundated with so many cases. And then you want to do this. Do you know how Nigerians bring up frivolous cases for the slightest reason? So
how busy is the vice president in comparison to the president?
I understand.
Those who argue that,
what's the purpose of this?
Well,
the reason for this?
So that it will hold them accountable. I think there is an argument for and against immunity. Those who would say that when you remove the immunity covering, it ensures that they are sitting on their toes. They know that they can be called to face criminal charges at any time. But then again, there's also the issue of distractions, because frivolous cases are brought to court and they're not able to face the
Why
work
the
that they're meant
deputies,
to do. Well, I mean,
they're not. I mean, with due respect to the deputies, there was a deputy governor that said, "Look, I had better things to do." They often refer to them as spare tires. That I have better things to do in my private business and private practice than being deputy governor. So I resign. I think that was a few
the issue is
years ago. So how busy can they get?
There's
that criminal charges will be
filed. But you'll be
them.
surprised at how frivolous cases can spring up. All the civil societies, individuals, they will bring up cases against them. But beyond them, I think what we need to have are stronger judicial institutions, that people know that when they go and serve, you come out and you answer questions. Where you know that, for example, even though, I mean, it's not the best example, but Jacob Zuma, you were president, you came out, you had to face the court.
Exactly.
So how many presidents have we seen being brought back to give account?
Not in Nigeria.
Vice President Muhammadu Buhari, have we heard much about him? You know, in Nigeria, the quality of Nigeria's economy took a downward turn since President Buhari came into power. From then till now, how many explanations have we
his CBN governor is cooling his heels behind bars. So people would say, you know, he was the one in charge of monetary policy and all of that.
Right.
I get your point.
But he wouldn't have done it without, you know, the
History express approval.
Exactly.
I guess in Nigeria we just leave things to posterity. Yes.
Posterity is not really judging people anyway. We need something more timely, more now. Yes,
And
there have been governors
yes.
that have had to face the court after their time, but it's not usually the norm. People need to know that there are consequences for actions, and
You're
in
right,
that way,
accountability
impunity will not abound in the way that it does in Nigeria. Senator K's bill for mandatory citizen registration to probe rising cost of data services, and this right here is another question about, okay, how well can we guarantee the effectiveness of this? So NIMC does this mandatory citizen registration. What are the implications of this? There's a replication of data for every Nigerian. You have your, beyond your passport, today they'll tell you to come and
BVN,
register, BVN, NIN, register as a citizen in Lagos or a resident in Lagos. The bank will do their KYC and they will ask for your details. It just feels like there really is a proliferation of data. How well can we guarantee the unification of data such that, I mean, if you're stopped if you're stopped over in America, the cops just need to get your driver's license and, you know, and they can just scan it, right? And they get all your information.
Very true.
When do we get to that point? And also, can we trust the authenticity of the websites or the data bank?
protection.
Because
yes,
remember
very
what
important
happened
conversation.
recently
You'll find it in
with NIMC and the breach that happened. So people were buying data for as low as 50 naira, 100 naira. So can we guarantee the safety of our data? Again, bills to create 4 states, scale second reading at reps. Lawmakers probe 1.24 trillion Sokok Road project funding. Federal government pays core members 77,000 naira monthly allowance, and that's one of the things I'll be looking at today when I discuss and share what Nigerians are saying.
I believe we have a call from a gentleman, Williams. Mrs. Williams, I beg your pardon.
Good morning,
From
Mrs.
Lagos.
Williams. Thank you very much for calling. Please go ahead with your comment.
Good morning. Good morning, team. You are doing a good job. I just listened to your last interview, and I had a few comments about the guest. That's the NBA president. I think he spoke really well. However, it was surprising to learn that he was saying something about the NBA being just an advocacy organization or an advocacy group, nothing too big. Because I've always wondered why the NBA cannot take certain actions like SERAP and the like against some of these impunities, going on in the nation. Also, there was something else that he said that caught me aback. Anyway, I can't remember that now. But again, the conversation that you were just having about data, I am glad that the rest are bringing that up. And I hope that they, solve that issue ASAP. We get something better. Nigerians cannot continue to experience this kind of, life is too expensive. It's just too expensive. Data now is how much for just a young Nigerian. At this point, teenagers cannot afford to have phones till they are like maybe... So they get into uni. There's no point because we can't fit the bill.
Right.
Anyway, thank you for what you do.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams, for calling. Just to quickly mention, she talked about data, what we said, and while she was speaking, I recalled just 2 days ago, my friend had gotten a MiFi, the mobile data, from a certain network provider. 1 week after it was working, and all of a sudden stopped working, she kept restarting, turning it off, turning it on. Only for her to go to their office or get into the office. They told her that her NIN, there was a problem with her NIN, so NCC asked them to cancel her line, and she said, and how did you not communicate that to me, and what is the problem with my NIN? So they told her to come so that they would snap her picture again and restart.
Why didn't you do that at the point of onboarding in the first place?
They did that. They took her picture, they took her NIN, they took everything, and at that point it wasn't 40. 1 week, a little over a week later, then there's now a problem. And then she said, people must give me back my money, and they did. So again,
and
the money spent, the flaw in our data management system it's unimaginable. And the amount of money we're spending on data. The other day I had to start checking what's happening with my data. It feels like somebody just opens a bottle of water and gobbling the thing down. So you have to pay for light, you have to pay for data. Our expenses are too much. And I'm hoping that we just really have a way out of this.
Please, there's a federal Consumer Protection Agency. What is their job? How are they not protecting us from this capitalist exploitation?
They would argue that the same economy that you have to face, the same high cost
they
of living
have
is
a
the same
mandate.
one
They have a
that
mandate. They get budgets every year, so they need to show they're working. I guess we should invite them to the studio.
We
one of these
certainly
days,
should.
yes.
Still on the front page of the Daily Independent, APC, PDP trade words over protest in Edo. Federal government grants zero tariff on imported pharmaceutical raw materials. INEC begins move to recall Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan. Notifies Kogi Central Senator of recall move. Natasha accuses INEC of bias. And at the top of the paper, Nigeria's judiciary facing blackmail. Shetima laments. Asks judiciary to shun serving parochial interest and reveals why it affirmed Tinubu's electoral mandate. And that's all we have on the front page of the Daily Independent.
Now let's move to the front page of the Punch newspapers. 91 group seek INEC registration as coalition talks gather steam. Electoral body says no application rejected as opposition gears up to challenge ruling party, says the rider. 91 groups want to register as political parties. That's quite a huge number. And let's see. Legal profession facing ethical challenges, says the Chief Justice of Nigeria. Natasha recall, INEC notifies Senate as constituents amend petition.
All right, we'll come back to that. Let's quickly take this call from Paul. We have Paul calling. Good morning, Paul. Thanks for calling. Please go ahead.
I want to say something about state creation in Nigeria. There's nothing bad about creating state in Nigeria. But from my own view, I want to say that creating up to 31 states is not all that necessary for Nigeria now. Because the ones we have, the 36 states we have, everybody is complaining that things are not working well, etc., etc. So creating more states, I see it as a burden. So creating more states in Nigeria is good, but it's supposed to be few. From the 6 geopolitical zones in Nigeria, it's supposed to be to create more few states, not up to 31 states. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.
You wonder why we need more states when some of the states we have are not economically viable. Everyone is going to Abuja cap in hand at the end of the month for FAC allocation. So is it priority? The ones we have, let's develop them to a level that there's self-sustaining and the people feel the impact of governance.
Yeah, it's again, I mean, just like you said, is it really a priority at the moment? Is something, although some quarters would advocate or would allege or say that they're not properly represented, you know, they've been asking for Olu State. A number of people have been advocating for certain other states. The arguments for and against, but I mean, that's the conversation we can have another day. But let's go back to the newspaper front.
Yes, review hike in data costs, Senators NCC. But I mean, the flip side of the argument, let me play devil's advocate here, is every other person has got a chance to increase their prices. The amount you used to buy turkey and chicken at your local restaurants is not the same. You didn't complain, you didn't take it to the Senate. The petrol pump prices increased from what it was last year. These telcos are also part of the Nigerian economic ecosystem. They feel the bite of inflation, and in order to keep services at a particular standard and maintain quality, they also have cost implications, and they're not a charity. They're in business to make profit. So why do we feel they shouldn't increase their
exactly. I mean, that's what
data?
I asked earlier, that everybody's feeling the bite of inflation. So that might also be another argument.
So everybody will hold the neck of who's paying you. So I guess we should also hold the neck of our employers. As I mean, the inflation is really biting hard. Still on the front page of the Punch newspapers, Anyalku Yakasai of Shoba to meet National Assembly on talks of a new constitution. And traffic's now as motorists battle flood on Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. I really feel for those who have to apply that route every day. It's one case or the other. If it's not a tanker, it's flooding, it's traffic, it's a big mess.
Really big mess.
Yes. And reps move to convert 37 LCDAs to proper local government in Nigeria. So interesting conversation there. Get a copy of the Punch newspapers to find out more on that. Ogu and Morocco signed energy MOU on energy, port development, and infrastructure. There's a lot we can learn from Morocco, especially Ogun State government is taking that initiative. I believe you've been to Morocco before.
No, I haven't, actually. Okay. I was meant to go 2 years ago. I had gotten my visa, but then last minute.
You know what? You don't need to go. Just go to Ogun State because they'll be learning a lot from Morocco. Ogun State is just next door.
Well, still on the front page of the Punch, I'd like us to react to some of the stories. Again, we mentioned if you'd like to be a part of the conversation, please join us. The numbers to call are on your TV screen if you'd like to react to any of the stories and share your thoughts about these stories. I want us to talk about, on the front page, it said, Rivers emergency rule, PDP governors ask Supreme Court to reinstate Fubara, Ibas sacks appointees. And I want to talk about the PDP as a viable opposition. In the past few years, especially in this current administration, PDP is meant to be the strongest opposition, the main opposition in our country. I mean,
they were in government for 16 years.
They were indeed. But unfortunately, I do not believe that the PDP has held up its name as an opposition. And there's so much that an opposition
why do you think so?
First of all, yes, I agree that the presidential spokesperson of the People's Democratic Party, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, is very vocal when it comes to issues of the economy, issues of government, the judiciary. You will see him always putting out a speech. Reno Omokri was talking about him condemning. I saw that tweet a while ago and she was like, he's about to condemn. Yes, he has been condemning. He's been speaking strongly and sharing.
He's following national issues.
But has the PDP as an opposition, a formidable opposition, been able to clean its house and show that it has a strong form? I think the PDP has exposed its weakness to the party in power as well as other parties and other Nigerians at large. Many cases in point.
It's almost like Alhaji Atiku Abubakar is doing the work of a national publicity secretary.
Always speaking about this, yes. So it's beyond that. Something as basic as the FCT minister and the role that he's played, and people would ask, is he a PDP member? Is he an APC member? Some would argue that he worked against the People's Democratic Party at the 2023 general elections. And many other actions that some would constitute anti-party. What has been done? You know, the attacks in the PDP against these PDP officials, look at it however you may. Yes, they are all individual pockets of issues here.
Court cases.
There's Nyesom Wike, there's Simla Lai Fubara. Both are PDP officials. Why did they need an APC president to wade into this? So if you look at some of the ways in which the PDP has revealed its vulnerability, even with Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, if you want to be a formidable opposition, you need to learn to play the politics of a formidable opposition.
I mean, you back your members, you show support, and we've seen the lack of that. Even the governor, like you rightly mentioned, of Rivers State, you hardly see an official position from PDP as a party saying, why would you remove one of us? A danger to democracy. All we see is just little statements here and there, and it takes a lot to do opposition politics. I guess that's why we're seeing
go to court. You know, you have to be able to, you have to have the spine for an opposition.
And being a viable opposition, having viable opposition parties is one of the hallmarks of democracy in Nigeria.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just so much that's happening, but we wish the PDP well. Let's take our final paper, the Daily Trust newspaper, and on the front page, Constitution Amendment, Immunity Debate. What is good for president is good for vice president.
What is good for the goose is good for the gander.
I really like that headline, but let's quickly take this call from Tony Eze. Good morning, Tony Eze. Thank you for calling.
Good morning.
All right, please go ahead.
Well, let me start from state creation. To me, I don't support it. As it is now in Nigeria, we don't need more states. Now, what we need is accountability for those that are on our affairs. There is some states, I don't want to name it, but if you come in Igbo land, there is some states that, if not this very governor that is governing the state now, the state has been there for long, and if you go there, it's not looking like a state.
What states are these?
He doesn't want to mention that. States that are almost like local governments.
Abia State.
Really?
If not OT that came on board now, the previous people that have been handling Abia State, you go to the state capital, it's not looking like a state capital. Everywhere that.
All right.
We are talking of creating more states. What we need is good people to be on board. Good people that will receive money from the federal and then think on how to make the states become vibrant and not creating more states.
All right.
The problem we have is people on the affair. And then PDP as opposition. When you are not standing on the truth, you are not working with truth, there is no way you can bring something fruitful. From day one, impunity is the order of the day in PDP. They are not doing something with due process. If not that, what is keeping Wike there? If truth is impunity. What is keeping Wike in PDP up to today? Upon all the things is destroying PDP. Because that is their style. That is what they have been doing. They have to keep it because there is no truth. If there is truth.
All right, Tony Eze, we have to go now. Thank you for your call and sharing your thoughts on PDP as a viable opposition as well as the creation of states. And that's what we can take this morning on the newspaper reviews. Remember, we do this every morning, so please join us. I will go on a very quick break now, and when we come back, we'll be talking about Nigeria's political scene. Is Nigeria truly becoming a one-party state? Share your thoughts when we return.
The Nigerian political space is witnessing what many observers call a one-party state. The APC, which was a merger of the Action Congress of Nigeria, the Congress for Progressive Change CPC, the All Nigerian People's Party ANPP, and the All Progressive Grand Alliance APGA has extended its fangs on state politics. As of 12th of November 2024, there are 21 states with APC governors, 12 with PDP governors, and 1 state each with APGA, Labour, and NNPP governors.
There's also the case of mass defection from opposition political parties such as the PDP, Labour Party, and NNPP to the ruling party APC. From members of the Senate, House of Reps, and one-time politicians. Interestingly, it's becoming obvious that the dominance of the ruling party may expand across opposition stronghold states in 2027, the year of elections. What could be the reasons for cross-carpeting, the policies, and the impact of the ruling party, internal wrangles in opposition strongholds, or are there more to this? Our guest served as special advisor to former President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan. He's an author and is now known as the Table Shaker. Please join us as we welcome Mr. Reno Omokri. Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I think a good way for us to start will be to talk about the opposition, which was the last conversation that we had. Your thoughts on the PDP as a viable opposition in Nigeria's current economic, political climate?
Well, the PDP has to put its house in order. If you recall, they had the Anambra gubernatorial elections party forms, and nobody bought the gubernatorial nomination form for the PDP. Now, that's just a sign of what's happening with the PDP. So the PDP has to put its house in order. You know, there's too much focus right now in the PDP on who will get the nomination in 2027. And that's causing a lot of disaffection, disunity, and strife within the party. So the PDP has to put its house in order. And one way to do that is forget about who's going to get the nomination in 2027 and focus on how the party is going to be a viable opposition party.
Now, Mr. Omokri, you served on the PDP government. Opposition was allowed to thrive. The opposition even won the elections, and President Goodluck Jonathan then called Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu to Mr. Buhari, former President Buhari, to congratulate him. What do you think is happening now? Why does it seem there are internal wranglings in every opposition party? The opposition seems to be in disarray. Some have suggested it to be the handwork of APC in installing moles in those parties to cause disaffection. What do you make of this?
Well, I don't have any evidence to suggest that. But the thing is, even if it's true, you as a political party should know that it is the job of the opposite party to yours to try to undermine you and to project itself. I mean, that's just politics 101. It happens all around the world. And so your job is to prevent that from happening. If you cannot prevent that from happening, what you're telegraphing to the people of the country where you have that political party is that you are not ready for governance.
All right, let's talk about still another force that people didn't see coming at the last elections. the person of His Excellency Peter Obi. Many of the obedience seem to think that you have a personal vendetta against Peter Obi and the obedience. Do you have an issue with them?
I don't. I'm going to tell you what happened. I took a vow to destroy that movement because Peter Obi was a project of mine. You know, myself, two people actually, Senator Ben Moribuz and I, a former president had asked us to make sure that we promote him because he felt that he was a good candidate. And so I did my best. I spent my money to promote him. I was responsible for Peter Obi becoming the running mate to Waziri Atiku Abubakar in 2019. I've said this publicly. I've got the document. I'm a meticulous record keeper. Waziri Atiku Abubakar cannot deny it. Peter Obi cannot deny it. Peter Obi was lobbying me, sending me his resume. We did everything we did. I've not collected a dime from Peter Obi. Now, what happened is that Peter Obi left our party, the People's Democratic Party, without informing any of us who helped him. And that's okay. He should have done that. But he left the party just suddenly. And then, obviously, we couldn't go with him because he didn't tell us that he was leaving. Now, even if he told us, we wouldn't have gone with him. So we had our party and we had our candidates, and we were trying to build our party. And what happened is that Peter Obi's movement, Obedience, they started attacking me, threatening me, insulting me. Now, that was okay, but then they moved from myself to my family. I just had a daughter at that time. There were multiple death threats. They came to my house in the United Kingdom. They trailed my wife and I when we were jogging. They found out my jogging route, and then they would pursue me jogging and then threaten me. And so one day I just got very annoyed. I contacted Peter Obi. I told him this is what was happening. And I named a specific individual who is online. I knew that the person masquerades as a mixed race girl on X. And I told him, look, I know who the person is. You've got to speak with that person on the phone. Peter Obi put me on speakerphone, talked to somebody on the background, and then later came back to me. I said, look, he cannot condemn that person. That specific person, he cannot condemn that person, but he will issue a general statement, but he cannot condemn that person. So that means that Peter Obi knew who that person was. Anyway, the attacks continued, and I would contact Peter Obi, and I've got records of all of this. Peter Obi would not do anything. And so I took a decision one day. I said, well, if Peter Obi is like this, if he's not going to control this violent movement, this thuggish movement, this mob, this headless mob, then I am going to do my possible best with whatever considerable, a political machinery that I have to destroy that movement. And that's just a summary of what happened.
Would you care to mention who the person was that you said you had spoken to Peter Obi?
Well, I discussed with Peter Obi. I don't think it's right for me to come here and then begin to do that. I put it to Peter Obi. The thing about me is that I'm not afraid of a confrontation, but when I want to do it, I will do it with you face to face and make sure that I give you an opportunity to put what is wrong right. And if you can do that, then the relationship is safe. But if you can't, well, then it goes awry. It goes awry, sorry.
Now, Mr. Omokri, two questions here. You used to be a very vocal critic of the current president, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and that seems to have changed. You've made a complete 360. Could you give us the reasons for that? And also looking at the current administration, you've been a vocal supporter of the president's economic policies, despite a lot of criticism from Nigerians. You've defended his economic reforms despite public outcry over inflation and hardship. What specific policies do you believe have been successful, and how do you justify the suffering many Nigerians are currently experiencing?
Well, if you look back into history, and that's the thing about me, a lot of Nigerians are not meticulous record keepers, and as a country, we have a very short memory. There are two things that I was against the president for. Two things. I had suspicions that he did not have the academic qualifications that he had. And then on September 19th, 2022, I went to Chicago State University. I met with individuals there. I was given incontrovertible evidence that Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu attended, passed his exams, and graduated from Chicago State University. And after that date, note that date, September 19th, after that date, September 19th, 2022, I changed completely. I told Nigerians, I said, listen, on the issue of his academic qualifications, I'm not going to criticize this man anymore. This was before the elections. He went to this school, and I encouraged my party. I said, listen, we cannot keep on attacking this man on a lie. We've got to just take that apart. And if you keep on attacking him on his qualifications, his certification, then I'm not going to be a party to that because, I mean, right now I've confirmed that it's lies. However, I still continued criticizing him on the drugs issue. So if you recall, this was September 19, 2022, I went to Chicago State University and I did a video there, live video. Nigerians saw me there. 2 months later, I was at Chatham House. I was protesting him. I protested him on only one issue, the drugs issue. I didn't protest against him on his qualifications because I had settled that. And then we had the Supreme Court decision, which said that they looked into the drug issue and it was not a drug conviction. It was not even a conviction against him. It was a conviction against another person. And he was involved only to the extent that that person, he was an accountant to that person. And it was the funds from that person that was convicted and he was asked to refund those. When the Supreme Court made that decision, don't forget, my late father was an appeals court justice. I had to take a decision that, okay, since he had been exonerated by the court, I cannot continue to criticize him on that issue because I would be like the people I had actually condemned who were still criticizing him on his academic qualifications. So I stopped criticizing him on both issues because he had been exonerated. Then we had the election and he won. When he won the election, I congratulated him and I went my merry way. I said I was going to continue with my life because what I do is that I write books and I travel. And that's what I've been doing. And he appointed a friend of mine, Malam Nuhu Ribadu, as his national security advisor. Now, the thing about me is I believe so much in relationships. Malam Nuhu Ribadu and I have a very, very solid and strong relationship. Right from after he had been exiled by the Yar'Adua administration, in California, we spent a lot of time together. We were like brothers. And then when he appointed Malam Nuhu Ribadu as his national security advisor, Malam Nuhu Ribadu invited me and then told me, he said, look, Reno, these are the plans that we have. We want to improve Nigeria. We want to make Nigeria better. And we are not going to do those things that you think that we're going to do. We're not interested in money. We have a good plan. And he convinced me. After he convinced me, I did a video right at his office. And I told Nigerians, I said, listen, as long as Malam Nuhu Ribadu is in this government, I'm going to support this government. Right. I'm going to support the economic policies. So I've been very transparent with Nigerians. It's just that our people have a very short memory.
All right, I want to go back to a tweet, still talking about your support or lack of it at the time for the current president, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. On the 16th of February, you said, let us face facts. Look at the state of Tinubu's teeth. Look at the state of his urine-soaked agbada. How can a man with such poor personal hygiene be entrusted with the fate of 200 million Nigerians? And Atole will be our president. Nitori kini, one shake me for one. This was one of the many tweets that you had put against. Now, you've spoken to the drugs, you've spoken to the education. Can you speak to what then else changed your perception of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and why if you feel differently about him?
Well then, because at that time I hadn't met him. I mean, you can read out the date again to your listeners, to your audience. That was a date before the elections. I hadn't met him, and meeting him changed my perception about him. You got to recall, that was an electioneering period. That was a campaign season. And during campaign season, you use everything that you have against your opponent. By the time I met him, by the time I saw his economic agenda, first and foremost, what you have to understand is that his economic agenda is identical to the economic agenda that we had in the PDP. I was responsible right from 2019, not even 2023, for helping our candidate to put together his economic agenda. When he went to Chatham House, I single-handedly wrote his speech. No other person wrote it. I, from A to Z, I single-handedly wrote his speech. So I'm very intimate with his economic agenda. And it's not a surprise because both Waziri Atiku Abubakar and Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu were in the Social Democratic Party. So if you look at our economic agenda, the things that we promised to do, this president is doing them. We promised that we're going to remove false subsidies. The president is doing them. We promised that we're going to float the naira. The president is doing that. We promised that we're going to devolve power from the federal to the state and local government. This president is doing that. So basically, if he's doing the things that we said we're going to do, why should I be against him? Look, there was a corollary to the question that the gentleman asked. He said that the economic suffering that Nigerians are going through. Listen, you got to understand that Nigeria is going through some challenges, not because the president is a bad president or, like the young girl said, a terrible president. No, we're going through some challenges because previous administrations did not do the right thing. We should not have been subsidizing fuel all these years. We should not have been subsidizing the naira. A lot of people think that removing the subsidy on fuel was just the biggest thing that the president has done. Well, it's quite true. The subsidy on fuel was costing us about $1.2 billion every month. But we were spending more money subsidizing the naira. We were actually spending $1.5 billion. And if you're at home, you can actually Google me. You can actually fact check me. We were spending $1.5 billion subsidizing the naira. Now, the value of the naira under Buhari, under previous presidents, was not the true value of the naira. The naira had been subsidized. So what this president did was that he just floated the naira, stopped subsidizing it. Because if you ask yourself, what were Nigerians using the subsidized naira to buy? We were spending that money on $25 million. We were spending on French champagne. Actually, $75 million. Then we were spending 25 million pounds on Scotch whiskey. We were spending $200 million importing human hair. We were not, if we were using that money to import technology to make Nigeria move from being a consumer nation to a prosumer nation. A prosumer nation is a nation that consumes what it produces. Then that would be okay. But we are frittering away that money. So what the president did is actually the right thing.
Right. I want us to speak about, some of your tactics in trying to hold people to account or persons in position of office. You said that before elections, you deploy whatever tactics. Now, in the case of Obi Ezekwesili, it wasn't an election. It was the Senate Committee on Ethics, Privileges and Public's petition. You did share your thoughts on X as well regarding this. You definitely were not in support of her saying that she should not tell anybody, she shouldn't tell a grown man, shut up. But I'm going to quote something that you said here. One day ago, you said, Obi Ezekwesili's manners are in equal proportion to her beauty. Why do you find this as a tactic to personally attack physical appearances as opposed to going to the content of what exactly happened?
Well, you can only say that if you believe that Obi Ezekwesili is not beautiful. I didn't say she wasn't beautiful. I said Obi Ezekwesili. You got to ask your question and then you got to allow me to answer the question. You can't answer your own questions.
I need to give you context to the question because judging from your previous tweets, you were not in support of how she had acted. So that tweet cannot be interpreted to mean that somebody, you think she's beautiful. From the previous tweet.
So now allow me answer the question, please, and don't interject. So what I said, is subject to subjective interpretation. I said that her manners are in equal proportion to her looks, and so you can interpret it however you want to interpret it. But what I meant by that statement is that Obi, she has to work on her manners, and basically I think it's wrong to tell a grown man shut up, and then when you do that and then the man responds, you begin to blame him for his response instead of actually taking responsibility for your own actions.
Do you support the way this distinguished senator responded to Dr. Obi Ezekwesili? Do you think it was proportional to what triggered the response in the first place?
You see, you read that tweet or that post to your viewers, but why didn't you read the subsequent ones to your viewers? I reprimanded Senator Nwaebonyi, and I said that he should not, my actual words, and I'm going to say that, I said a man should control his anger, not women, and that a woman should control her mouth, not men. And that's what I said. Subsequently, I said that the senator should not have acted in that manner, and that two wrongs do not make a right, but that he was provoked by Obi Ezekwesili. And the thing is that in the heat of the moment, you cannot tell what a grown man will do. Because a lot of these things happen, on the fly. They happen in the heat of the moment. And you can't, when you trigger people, you're triggering an emotional response. You're not triggering a rational response. So you have to be responsible for what you get. And in this instance, I think he went above board, and I understand he has apologized, and so we should let it go at that.
Now, Mr. Omokri, let's talk about accountability and loyalty. As someone who was once a relentless critic of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, How do you balance your current support with the need to remain objective? And should supporters ever challenge their leaders?
Supporters should challenge their leaders. I mean, when the president went to Paris, France, during the time when we had, I think there was a protest that we had in Nigeria. It wasn't very successful, but we had a protest. I did come out and I criticized the president, and I said that, look, you've got to leave France. I did an open letter. I said, you've got to leave France immediately and come back to Nigeria. What you have to understand is that I'm not going to be just somebody who just criticizes, lashes out emotionally at whatever an administration does. I was called Buhari tormentor under the previous administration. But if you go back and check, I commended President Buhari 17 times. It's on record. So if you do something that's good, I'm going to commend you. If you do something that's bad, I'm going to condemn you. But I'm going to take everything that you do on a case-by-case basis, objectively, look at it, look at the impact on the country. If you look at this administration, for example, if you look at what they've done has actually built this country. The economic reforms are actually working. You know, now our economy is growing. For the whole of 2024, we saw what happened. Our economy grew at a rate of 3.84%. Our GDP grew at 3.84%. That is good. Now, trade surplus. We now have a trade surplus. And not just that, we have a record-breaking trade surplus. Our trade surplus is now 209% more than what it was under General Buhari. I mean, so when we take that into account, if you look at the unemployment rate released by the Nigerian National Bureau of Statistics, our unemployment is down. If you look at inflation, inflation has been tamed. So these economic policies, they are working. We should continue at that. But for anybody expecting that subsidy is going to come back and then subsidy on the Naira is going to come back, look, if this administration tries to bring that back, I will fight this administration, because we cannot be taking loans to subsidize the Naira. We cannot be taking loans to subsidize fuel subsidy.
We acknowledge some of this data you just reeled out. I mean, some experts have questioned the methodology used in calculating inflation, for example. But the reality on ground is different. The common man on the street doesn't really care about the GDP figures and those statistics you reeled out. What he concerns him and his present-day reality is that the cost of things has skyrocketed. He can't afford certain things he used to afford before, and people are complaining of hunger. Everyone is begging. So how do you relate this progress that you just said to the hardship in the country, the economic realities, the high cost of living?
You see, that's the thing. You haven't provided any data. You've just given your opinions that everyone is suffering. That's not data. I deal with facts. I deal with data. So I'm going to say this. The Global Terrorism Index, which is the only arbiter in the world, is not controlled by Nigeria. You know, it's controlled by the Institute for Economic and Peace, which is based in Australia. They've said that Nigeria is now the most secure it has been since 2014. That's a Global Terrorism Index. Now, we've seen in Nigeria, a lot of people don't know that we've got something called the Kwara-Rafa axis, which starts from Zuru in Kebbi State all the way to Gembu in Taraba State. There's now peace there. For the first time, northern minorities are able to go back to their villages and to their farms. And we've seen, now this is not Nigeria, we've seen Chatham House, we've seen the Pew Institute, we've also seen other ratings agencies say that food prices in Nigeria are coming down. The reason why food prices are coming down is because now we have security in these parts of Nigeria where there used to be crisis, where there used to be banditry, and people are able to come back to their farms, people are able to go back to their villages, and so food prices are gradually coming down. Now, if you recall, 2 days ago, the Emir of Zazzau said something. He said, if you are poor, then you should marry only one wife. Our people have an exceedingly high population growth rate. So we got to take some responsibility. I think it was, this post went viral. I think it was 5 days ago. Somebody came and attacked me on X and was saying that, look, you see, Tinubu is a terrible president and you're supporting a terrible president. My father is a minimum wage earner and he has 7 children and he cannot pay our school fees. Now, that's one of the challenges that we're having in Nigeria. We are having people who are having more children than they can afford, and then they begin to blame the president. Okay. You see, we've got to cut our coat according to our size. And please let me finish. Under this administration, at least each state is now getting double the federal allocation that they used to have. Some states are actually having triple, but at the barest minimum, each state is having double. So Nigeria should take the responsibility of calling their state governors and their local government chairmen also to account. So a lot of things, a lot of Nigerians don't know that some of the things that they are accusing the president for, like teachers' salaries, like markets, like certain things, are actually the responsibility of their state governments. But if you ask me, I will go with the data, and the data from foreign ratings agencies as well as local ratings agencies is that things are improving in Nigeria.
All right, I'm sure that Nigerians will definitely react to this. We'll see the comments in YouTube as well and know, where to go from here with our conversations. But I'd like to go back quickly to something you said at the start of the conversation when you said you personally made Peter Obi Alhaji Atiku's vice. I'd like you to sort of give us context to that conversation and how you made that happen.
Well, what happened is that I used to be very close to Waziri Atiku Abubakar. I'm not as close with him as I used to be for my own reasons. I allowed him because I've become a supporter of the current president's economic policies, which are actually a facsimile, an exact replica of our own economic policies. But I do understand that that puts me in a position whereby if I remain close to him, maybe I appear hypocritical. So I've given him some breathing room. Now, here's the thing. When he won the People's Democratic Party presidential nomination in 2019, he called me and then he said to me, Reno, I need a running mate, but I need a running mate from the Southeast. And I want you to help me. I want you to headhunt for me. Now, without telling him, he later found out, because I talked about this publicly on several interviews. I called former President Jonathan, who is my political leader, and I said to him, sir, the candidate has asked me to help him headhunt for a suitable running mate. Now, what do you think I should do? And he told me, he said, no, Reno, it has to be Peter Obi. And I said, but sir, I can't just give him one name. That's just going to appear, it's just going to appear a bit arrogant on my part. I need to give him some names and then he should choose. So he told me, okay, you know what, Reno, work on this. You're a very intelligent person. That's why I'm quoting him. Work on it. Give him several names, but make it in a way that he picks Peter Obi. So I called certain people from the Southeast, and then one of them is from the South, but of Igbo origin. And I asked them to give me their resume. And then Peter Obi kept on calling me, there's local parlance that we use in Nigeria, per second. He was actually following me bumper to bumper. He sent me his resume. Some other people, one of them is now the chairman of a bank, sent me his resume. Another person is now an international civil servant. I got their resumes, put them together, and then I packaged Peter Obi, and I sent all the names to His Excellency. And I suggested that, okay, these are the people I believe that you should pick. But amongst all of them, I think that this is the best candidate. That's how it came to me.
Thank you very much for sharing that. We unfortunately have to wrap up the conversation, but we want to please get your word that we'll have a second conversation, because there's so many areas that you've highlighted that we'll need to look to. For example, when we want to fact check some of the things you said. A report by Africa Fact Check says here that close to 2 years after, majority of Nigerians are worse off as a result of the subsidy removal, as petrol has gone from around 200 naira per litre to about 860 naira per litre, and even went as high as 1,000 naira per litre. And I know that whilst you have your perspective on what the government is doing, Nigerian citizens have theirs as well. So we certainly want to get your thoughts on that.
No, but I need to respond to that before you go. You can't just say that and go.
30 seconds, please.
Yeah, Africa Fact Check is not a ratings agency. Africa Fact Check is just like, let's say like a blog, or it's not a ratings agency. So you cannot use that to rebut what I said. If you talk about maybe Fitch rating agency or Standard & Poor's, or if you talk about maybe the Pew Institute, that is a ratings agency. So Africa Fact Check, you have to tell your viewers that's not a ratings agency. So you cannot say that. So if you're talking about ratings agency, you come back to me with what the IMF has said or with what the World Bank has said. And these institutions have said that the economic reforms of the current administration are working. Our GDP is growing. Unemployment is reducing, the inflation rate is reducing. So come back with me with ratings agencies.
The poverty rate isn't reducing.
We unfortunately have to go. I mean, there's so many numbers that we have to look at, but we certainly need to get your word for a second interview so we can delve into the details and the data.
Okay, but just before you go, I need to say this, Nigerians should focus on the facts. Facts do not lie. Don't focus on individuals. Don't focus on your emotions. Focus on the facts. Thank you for watching me, and may God bless you all.
Thank you.
Mr. Reno Omokri, thank you for joining us this morning on Breakfast Central. We look forward to our second conversation with you where we can go into these facts that you have shared and would like to go through them one after the other. Thank you so much for your time. All right, and that's where we draw the curtain on today's show. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back again tomorrow. I'm Olive Emoti.
And I'm Gbenga and Olive. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.